On January 22, 1905, a date etched in history as Bloody Sunday. The snow-covered streets of St. Petersburg, Russia, were stained crimson. This single day would become the spark that ignited a firestorm of revolution, ultimately leading to the downfall of the centuries-old Romanov dynasty. But what led to this horrific event? To understand it, we need to travel back to the dawn of the 20th century, a time of immense social and political turmoil in the vast Russian Empire. Russia at this time was a land of stark contrasts. While the aristocracy, led by Tsar Nicholas II, lived in unimaginable opulence, the vast majority of the population, peasants, and a growing class of industrial workers, endured crushing poverty and brutal working conditions. The recent and humiliating defeat in the Russo-Japanese War had only deepened the national crisis, exposing the government's incompetence and draining the state's resources. Inflation was rampant, wages were pitiful, and for the average worker in cities like St. Petersburg, life was a daily struggle for survival. Factories were grim, dangerous places. A typical workday could last up to 15 hours, with no safety regulations, no job security, and no right to protest. Children were often forced to work alongside adults in these hazardous environments. The workers were packed into squalid, overcrowded tenements, where disease and despair were constant companions. For years, their grievances had been ignored. Their pleas for reform met with indifference from a government that seemed to exist in another world. The people's faith in their Tsar, and they traditionally saw as a divinely appointed little father, a benevolent protector, was beginning to erode. In this climate of desperation, a priest named Georgy Gapon emerged as an unlikely leader. Gapon was a complex figure, charismatic speaker who had initially worked with the police to create a state-sanctioned workers' organization. The idea was to channel the workers' discontent into a manageable, non-revolutionary outlet. However, as he spent more time with the workers and witnessed their suffering firsthand, his sympathies genuinely shifted. He became a powerful voice for their cause, and his assembly of Russian factory and mill workers of St. Petersburg grew rapidly in membership and influence. The immediate trigger for the march came in early January 1905. 4 workers at the massive Putilov ironworks were fired. Allegedly for their union membership. This act was the final straw. Strike was called, and it quickly snowballed. Within days, over 100,000 workers across St. Petersburg had walked off their jobs, bringing the city's industry to a standstill. But this was more than just a strike over for fired men. It was the culmination of years of pent-up anger and frustration. Father Gapon, seeing the escalating situation, proposed a bold and, he believed, peaceful solution. He suggested that the workers, along with their families, march to the Tsar's official residence, the Winter Palace. They would not come with weapons or revolutionary slogans, but with religious icons, portraits of the Tsar, and a humble petition. This petition was a remarkable document. It wasn't a demand for the overthrow of the government. Instead, it was a heartfelt plea to their little father. The petition called for an 8-hour workday, an increase in wages, better working conditions, and, most significantly, the establishment of a constituent assembly elected by universal suffrage. It was a request for basic human dignity and political representation. Gapon and the marchers genuinely believed that if they could only present their case directly to the Tsar, he would understand their plight and grant their requests. They were convinced that the Tsar himself was good, but was being misled by corrupt and wicked ministers. They had no idea that the Tsar wasn't even in the city that day. And so, on that fateful Sunday morning, January 22nd, up to 200,000 people began their march. It was a cold, clear winter day. Entire families participated, men, women, and even children, all dressed in their Sunday best. They came from different corners of the city, converging on Palace Square. They sang hymns and God Save the Tsar, their mood solemn yet hopeful. They were not a revolutionary mob. They were a procession of supplicants, placing their faith in the age-old bond between the ruler and his people. But the authorities had a very different plan. The government, paranoid about public disorder and seeing the march as a direct challenge to its authority, had deployed thousands of troops and police to block the approaches to the Winter Palace. They had orders to prevent the marchers from reaching their destination by any means necessary. As the columns of unarmed workers approached the cordons of soldiers, they were met not with dialogue, but with a wall of bayonets. Eyewitness accounts from that day are chilling. The initial confrontations were tense. The marchers, still believing in the sanctity of their mission, pushed forward, pleading with the soldiers to let them pass. At the Narva Gate, one of the key access points, the cavalry first charged the crowd, trampling people under their horses' hooves. When the crowd didn't disperse, the infantry commander gave the order to fire. The first volley of rifle fire cut through the front ranks of the procession. The sound of gunfire shattered the air, replacing hymns with screams of terror and agony. People who had been holding icons of the Tsar moments before were now lying dead or wounded in the snow. Panic erupted. The crowd, trapped and defenseless, was mowed down in successive volleys. The same scene was repeated at other locations around the city, like the Troitsky Bridge and on Nevsky Prospect. The soldiers fired indiscriminately into the dense throngs of men, women, and children. One survivor later recalled, "The soldiers, without any warning and without a single moment's hesitation, opened fire. The shots were fired not in the air, but straight into the thick of that living, breathing, an unsuspecting human mass. The snow turned red. The dream of a peaceful appeal to the Tsar died in a hail of bullets." Father Gapon, who was at the front of one of the columns, miraculously survived, whisked away by supporters. His faith, however, was shattered. Standing over the bodies of his followers, he is said to have cried out, "There is no God any longer, there is no Tsar." The exact number of casualties on Bloody Sunday is still debated by historians, but it's estimated that hundreds were killed and thousands were wounded. The official government report ridiculously claimed only 96 dead, a figure that nobody believed. The true cost was far higher. But the most significant casualty of that day was the Russian people's centuries-old faith in their Tsar, the Little Father, was no longer seen as a benevolent protector. He was now Nicholas the Bloody, a murderer of his own people. The news of the massacre spread like wildfire across the Russian Empire and the world. The immediate aftermath was a wave of revulsion and rage. Strikes erupted in every major city. Peasant uprisings swept through the countryside. Mutinies broke out in the army and navy, most famously aboard the battleship Potemkin. The violence on Bloody Sunday didn't crush the protest movement, it supercharged it. It transformed a plea for reform into a full-blown revolution, the Revolution of 1905. Faced with a nation on the brink of collapse, Tsar Nicholas II was finally forced to make concessions. In October of that year, he issued the October Manifesto, which promised civil liberties and created an elected parliament, the Duma. For a moment, it seemed like Russia might be on a path to becoming a constitutional monarchy. But these reforms were granted reluctantly and were systematically undermined by the Tsar in the years that followed. The Duma was given little real power, and the autocracy soon reasserted its control. However, the damage was done. Trust between the ruler and the ruled was irrevocably broken. Vladimir Lenin, who was in exile at the time, called Bloody Sunday and the 1905 revolution a dress rehearsal for what was to come. The lessons learned, the political consciousness awakened, and the deep-seated hatred for the regime that was solidified on that day all paved the way for the revolutions of 1917. The ghosts of Bloody Sunday would haunt the Romanov dynasty for the next 12 years, until its final violent end. Bloody Sunday stands as a stark and tragic reminder of what can happen when a government becomes completely detached from the suffering of its people. It shows how a desperate, hopeful plea for justice can be turned into a catalyst for revolutionary violence through brutal repression. The massacre on the streets of St. Petersburg wasn't just an isolated tragedy. It was a pivotal turning point that set Russia on its bloody path into the 20th century, a path that would reshape the entire world. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into history interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories from the past. Let us know in the comments what historical event you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next one.